Go ahead.
My name is Marlene Winell. I have a PhD in Human Development and Family Studies, and then I became a licensed psychologist, and I've been doing that kind of work for many years. I wrote a book called Leaving the Fold, a guide for former fundamentalists and others leaving their religion. And one thing that has become a specialty in my practice has been to work with people that I call reclaimers. And reclaimers are people that have left a religion, and usually it's a religion that has been authoritarian in some way, restrictive, rigid religion, mostly forms of Christianity, but also other religions. And they've wanted to release these rigid kinds of beliefs and practices, and they've wanted to reclaim their lives. So we've settled on that as a term. So that's been a big part of my work, and it wasn't really an intentional kind of niche that I was seeking out, but it worked out that way partly because I went through it myself and then found out that there was a big need for this work.
And so what term do you use to describe your non-belief?
My own?
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting issue. And I noticed that the atheist symbol is a big A. And I've talked about this with my groups, and especially at a retreat where we talk about this. And I like to say that the A for me, it stands for animal. And that is a concept that means a lot to me. Because one of the things that is a huge shift and a huge transformation in leaving the whole Christian or religious mindset is to become part of the natural world and to accept reality as it is. And in fact, I think that the debate about evolution is not at all about whether or not the world was created in 6 days or about Adam and Eve or anything like that. I think it has much more to do with looking at who we are now, not where we came from, but who are we now. And that has everything to do with how we can reclaim our lives and become who we can be as full human beings, as part of the natural world. And what that means is to become a part of the animal world. And to say more about that, it's part of all the reclaiming your right to be here on this earth. You don't have to earn anything. You look around at the birds and the squirrels, and they're not earning their right to be here. They don't have to prove anything, and neither do we. We have no apologies to make. We also can reclaim our creativity. We can reclaim our sexuality. All these things that are normal and natural, that are part of just being Homo sapiens. And if we want to get a little more specific about being animal, I'll say I'm a Homo sapien. But I don't necessarily want to say atheist, because that's kind of a non-word to me. It's what I don't believe. And technically, yes, I'm an atheist, because it means I'm not a theist. I reject the anthropomorphic God of the Bible. I think that character is a pernicious character that needs to be rejected for many reasons. And I haven't adopted any sort of new personification of a deity either. And so philosophically, I suppose I would go along with something that might look like humanism, but honestly, I kind of like animal.
And you mentioned that you used to be a believer yourself. You went through the process of deconversion. Was that a difficult process for you?
To leave the faith? Sure. Took many years because my parents were missionaries. I grew up overseas. I had what you might think was a fairly sheltered existence. But my parents were not opposed to learning and education, and I think I was a pretty smart kid, so I did a lot of studying of my own, and I studied the Bible, and as everybody knows, if you study the Bible a little too much, you'll start finding things that are gonna question your faith. And then when we moved back to the States, I got involved with the Jesus movement and was quite zealous. I was a really good Christian, and I was expecting Jesus to come back soon, and so I witnessed with the best of them. And I would say I had a great personal relationship with Jesus, and I've said that he was my first lover. It was very emotional. I went to a Pentecostal church. I spoke in tongues, and it was extremely meaningful, and it was not all bad. So moving away took a while, and there are pushes and pulls. I got disenchanted with things in the faith and in the church, intellectually, problems with the Bible, but also morally, serious problems with the faith, and then the social structure of the church, the patriarchy, the politics, and then the attractions outside. Finding out that non-Christians were not necessarily stupid or evil or living meaningless lives. Kind of what you're doing with this book, finding out that there were people in the world, which we called the world, it was ruled by Satan, and yet there were folks out there that were having happy lives and that were good people and doing good things, and that they were not religious at all, or they were from some other religion, and that we Christians did not have a monopoly. And going to college and meeting more people and having a lot more experiences was just giving me a lot more information.
So, currently, what gives your life joy and meaning?
My life is, the joy and meaning in my life is a mosaic. It's not any one thing, and I have to admit that it's something that I work at, because there are still leftovers from a religious mindset that I think I still have and a lot of reclaimers still have. And one of them is a kind of idealism or perfectionism, that things have to be good and right and joyful and meaningful all the time, and it's not like that. So accepting things as they are, accepting life as it is a constant work in progress, I think. But there are many, many shining moments, and so one thing that I do and that I have tried to do my whole life is to basically pay attention. And this is kind of an existential thing, and philosophically I feel very much aligned with an existential point of view of being here now and paying attention to the details of life. And just life unfolding in front of me day by day, so that it's not what's happened in the past nor what's going to happen in the future, but what's really happening in the moment. And I know that could sound cliche, but it's actually a spiritual goal in a lot of traditions, and it's easier said than done, because humans are wired to do lots of planning and participate and predicting and worrying about other things. So it's very important to me. So that's why I do a number of things that help me with that bring a lot of joy, and beauty, for one thing, I think is a big source of joy. So doing art and doing and participating in anything that brings that kind of beauty, whether it's photography or painting or just observing, like right now, looking at the beauty that's around us. And that's why we're here on the beach, because I live here, and whenever I'm having a bad day, I can just come down here and just remind myself to pay attention to what's right in front of me. And like my scientist friend says, he says he doesn't understand why religious people want more. He says, why do you want any more than this?
That's a good way to put it. What do you say to religious people when they tell you that without God you're missing something important in your life, or that you can't have that true joy and purpose in your life without God?
Well, it is interesting because they do say that, and they also say something along the lines of Pascal's Wager, that and we're supposed to hedge our bets, right, in case the story is right. And I say, no, I'm sorry, because they say, what would you lose if the story is wrong? And I say, you'd lose a lot. You'd lose a lot because you're losing everything that I'm describing right now. Because in planning what is going to happen later, you are not focused. And it's like listening to a piece of music and waiting for the end, and then realizing that you were supposed to sing and dance. You were supposed to dance while the music was playing. And this is also not a new point, but and so again, when I'm working with clients who are reclaimers, and they have trouble with this, I say, what do you do when you're listening to music? Are you sitting there waiting for the end of it, or when you're at a concert, or are you just listening to the music? And what happens if you start thinking about the end and what you're going to do after the concert is over? Does that enhance your enjoyment of the music? And no, it ruins it. It totally ruins it. So what I would say to people that try to tell me that we're the ones that are missing out, I say, oh, it's the absolute opposite. And in fact, I was on a camping trip with some family members that are very religious, and I was with someone else who was also non-religious, and we were carrying on and saying that we needed to have a good time now because they were going to have a good time. They were being kind of dour, and we were saying that we needed to have a good time now because we weren't going to have a good time later, that we absolutely needed to do our fun now. And it was very confusing for them. But yeah, no guarantees. And that's a hard thing, isn't it? It's a hard thing to live without guarantees, and that's an adjustment that people have to make. We don't know what happens after we die exactly, and that's part of why people want religion. They want that kind of assurance. Living with ambiguity is not so easy, but in the end we don't have any choice. So it's better to focus on what we can enjoy now.
Does death scare you? If there's no afterlife, is that something that frightens you?
It doesn't frighten me because I always just think, I always compare it to where was I before I was born? Am I frightened about what it was like before I was born? And what is there to be frightened of? No. What's more frightening is to reach the end of life and to not have lived.
That's a very good way of putting it.
And that's what I'm talking about. Is the idea of not living. And so, and it's not just religious people that are not living. It's something that is pretty endemic in our society. We have a lot of workaholism. We have lots of it going on. You don't have to be religious to be not paying attention to being alive. And in my early 20s, I made a promise to myself when I first realized that I was losing my faith and that this was my life. I distinctly remember, I was in college, and I distinctly remember making a promise to myself to notice my life. And I remember walking across the grass, taking my shoes off and feeling the grass under my feet, and deciding that I wanted to feel the grass under my feet. And that was an important day, that that I go back to, like a touchstone, is be sure you notice your life, Marlene, and not forget that. And, take off your shoes and feel the sand, feel the water. And sensory recruitment is actually a technique in meditation and in relaxation training. And I teach it to clients too. If you're feeling anxious and stressed, to just stop and go through all your senses. What can you see? What can you hear? What can you feel? What can you smell, taste? And it just brings you into the present in a real state of calm and relaxation, because there's no past and no future, and then there's no reason to be anxious, because you're not comparing it to anything. Everything just is. And you're not judging. That's another leftover, is judging, good or bad. Sometimes there's no need to judge something good or bad, it just is. And that's kind of a strange concept, because most people want everything to be good, but sometimes just letting it be is enough.
Yeah. It's so nice out here.
And more than enough, because you're not laying expectations.
Right. Right. What inspires you? Actually, before you answer that, thank you. Let me just. All right. So we were saying. Let's wait till that.
There's traffic, and there's the airport nearby.
So, what inspires you?
Creativity inspires me. Newness. I love going to art shows, or reading new things, or seeing things that people have come up with, and I'm just constantly amazed at what new things people are able to come up with. There's a YouTube series called Create or Else that I love, where this guy's just collected all these amazing stories of people that are doing these creative things that you would never think of. But there's something that's kind of challenging, I guess, when you get older. Like I just turned 60, and after a while you feel like, like you've seen everything. And I love being with little children for that reason. Like, one of my good friends right now is 4-year-old kid, and just seeing through her eyes is so delightful. The whole beginner's mind that Buddhists talk about, or beginner's eyes. That's why I like to do the Mixang photography. But trying to see things as if it's for the first time. Like, here we have all this sand and this grass, and this is pretty sharp, and this wood is hard. And then all of a sudden, here's this soft thing, and it's like traveling down the beach. But I think that's inspiring. I know that sounds like a small thing, but every moment is actually brand new. There's some constellation of events right now that has never ever happened before. And so to notice what that is a constant intriguing thing. And if you're talking to somebody and to see them learn something, like I enjoy, for example, being friends with all different kinds of people, especially people that other folks might consider to be really a pain or really obnoxious. Like I have a fairly conservative friend who's a bit of a hawk, and I am very much a peacenik. And to listen to him or try to talk to him and just to see him realize something is amazing, or just to try to figure out how somebody's mind is working. And that's why I enjoy being a psychologist, or to read a book that somebody has written that has learned something, especially in like neuroscience right now. Neuroscience is exploding, what we're learning about the brain and the importance of learning more and more about ourselves. Evolutionary psychology, there's so much about the way that we operate that has to do with the fact that our brains are very much the same as they were in Cro-Magnon days, and that some of the things we do are geared towards survival in that environment, and that we need to take responsibility for that and acknowledge it so that we can use our frontal cortex to make other decisions about how to behave, instead of just shooting off and doing things unconsciously, like the way that people talk to each other or the way that we start wars. And this gets to another, can I talk about a pet peeve, or does this have to all be positive?
Sure.
One of the things that religious people do, and I did this too, and in fact this is so understandable because the world life is difficult, and we're all going to die, is to hope for salvation. Jesus is going to come back and rescue us, and justice. There's going to be a judgment day, and evil's going to be taken care of. And if that's not going to happen, if this is our home, and by the way, when I work with reclaimers, I have these like steps in recovery, and one of them is to, and I talk about get real, which is to realize your religion's not working. Get a grip, which means don't panic. And get a life, rebuild your life. Get with the program, it means rejoin the human race. The last one is nice, get your groove on, which means go dancing, have fun, be here now. But the part about get with the program is that, this is a human family, and we're in this together. And to have so many people on the planet, and especially here in this country, in the United States, to be thinking that they're going to get rescued, or that, God is going to take care of so much that we don't need to be taking it on ourselves, makes it difficult for the rest of us, and is dangerous. I wrote this open letter to Christians like that, saying, what if you're wrong? What if global warming is true? What if these signs of the end that you think are so exciting are actually things that we're causing? We're bringing them on ourselves, and actually a plea for, hey, we need you. What if there are 20 people in the lifeboat and 10 of them think that we're going to get rescued, so they're not helping to row? The thing I'm trying to say is, no, we're in this together. We're in the same boat. Wake up. There is no rescue coming. So would you please just join us and be part of the human race? I had an ex-Mormon I was working with who was sad because he said now he doesn't feel like he has anything in common with anybody. It used to be such a nice little community. And I just said, what are you talking about? You don't have anything in common with anybody? And I started naming all the things that we have in common and say, next time you're on a bus, turn to the next guy and say, do you worry about finding meaning in your life? Do you worry about having good relationships with people? Do you worry about this? And do you see if you have anything in common? And then I took him for a walk, and we went down to the Berkeley BART, and we started chatting with people that were sitting around, and just so, because he was terrified to talk to normal, ordinary, worldly people, because he didn't have anything in common with them. Not only do we have a lot in I wish that they could feel like they could be more a part of the human race. And I realize that what we're up against is fear, because the idea of being rescued, the whole delusion, the whole illusion, is very nice. It's very comforting, and what we're talking about, finding joy and meaning without God, seems like it's not possible, and so it seems like a scary proposition. So the first thing that people find out when they do the reclaiming is that it is possible, and it's easier than they thought it was, especially when people are working on it together. And there's the challenge, though, because in churches people have this community where they do things together and they affirm a lot of things together. And in the secular world, we don't have a place we go every Sunday where everyone's going to be there and we hold each other up like that. And it would be nice if we had more of that.
That was actually my next question, which was, religions provide not only, it's not just a belief, it's a community, it's a support group, it's an interaction weekly with people. How can we in a secular community give people a place to land when they fall from religion? Or do a better job at building a community for people?
I wish I had an answer for that, It's like, at the end of one of my 3-day retreats, we had a mock service we called the Rockin' Church of Unbelief. We had a full-on church service. We had music. We had projected video and lyrics, and we sang songs. We had lots of musicians because they had all been musicians in church. I gave an unsermon. We had an offering, but we gave money out instead of collecting it. We had a meet and greet where we bumped hips and patted each other on the ass. We did the whole thing, and I had friends, not the people that were just at the retreat, but I invited outside friends also. And this woman next to me, who was my friend, she leaned over and she said, "How often does this church meet?" And I said, "This is not a church. We're just having fun." And she goes, "Oh, really? Because I'd come to this church." So I don't know. And we also had a big sign, it was Rockin' Church of Unbelief, and we had a couple of greeters at the beginning holding this sign. So I guess she got the impression that this was a real church meeting. There are groups starting, I guess, and there are meetings. They're like humanist clubs. It's just harder to find. I like to participate in groups that are doing things, whether it's a writers group or an activist group that's doing some political work or whatever. But I think the thing that has been good with churches is that there's a consistency. I mean, you can go or not go, and it's always there. We don't really have anything like that yet.
Looking back at your life from where you are in the present, taking a moment to not think just about the present, but thinking about the past, do you have any memories that stick out as being an experience of particular joy, particular meaning or purpose of this life or this world that stick out to you?
Well, I think if you ask any mother or parent, that childbirth would be top of the list. I've got 2 children, and there's absolutely nothing to compare with holding a newborn. So that would, and of course, that's the culmination of hard labor. So it's pretty amazing that way. And then it's not a moment, but the whole process of raising a child is magical. you know, to see a human being develop like that. So, yeah, that's something I wouldn't trade for anything. You know, I have two amazing human beings for children that I admire. Well, back to what I was saying too about newness and creativity and difference. My travels have been really important that way, and so going places. I've been all over the world, and to me, a value in my life is to experience as much as possible, and it doesn't always have to be a positive experience. Sometimes I'm just interested in the variety of experience, you know, and I mean, because I want to know. I'm kind of a knowledge junkie too. I mean, I read lots of books, and I want to hear people's stories, and I want to see things, and I want to hear things, see things that are also painful and difficult too. You know, like I want to go to Cambodia and see the killing fields, see the piles of skulls, and I want to know, you know, like the things that have happened, and I want to hear people's pain. I guess, and I guess that's part of why I'm a decent psychologist, because sometimes people are so afraid of their pain, and they're afraid to tell it because they think that, you know, it's unbearable and you're going to crumble or it'll make it worse. So I don't think so. You know, I think knowing and accepting and dealing with reality is where it is quite possible. We're capable of that, and rising to the occasion. You asking back to the inspiration thing. Rising to the occasion is something that's inspiring. And when I see somebody else when I rise to the occasion of something that is really difficult, or when I see somebody else, that to me is inspiring. And so when I have a client sitting in front of me and tell me something horrendous, and I'm still there, I don't go anywhere, and they start getting hesitant and everything, and I say, I'm not going anywhere, I'm listening, and I'm holding it. You know, you can tell me everything, and I'm holding it. And it's okay. Something happens there, you know. We can handle it. We can handle life as it is, you know. I feel like this is kind of a rocky moment, you know, like, hey, we do not need to believe in an afterlife. We don't need to have somebody rescue us. Not because life is perfect and wonderful all the time. Yeah, we have these gorgeous moments. We have beautiful moments. You know, like I said, with this feather could not be more. You know, when we talk about perfectionism, and people think that they don't want to let go of their perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't where you have to like settle for mediocre. That's not what letting go of perfectionism is. Perfectionism is when you don't have to have everything be perfect all the time. Because every so often, something really is perfect, you know. Like when your child is born and you're looking in the eyes of a newborn baby, you can't get any more perfect. Or even if you watch that thing float away, you can't get any more perfect. But things are also imperfect all the time. Like the static that you're getting and the wind is blowing, you're not getting good sound. You know, you can't get perfection all the time. That's all it is. So when people think they can't handle life and they need to go to heaven to where things are going to be perfect, that's because you don't think that you can handle life with all of its toughness the way it is. But the truth is, you can. We can. And people handle really, really hard, tough things, and they come through it. And that's inspiring. That's inspiring. And You know, when people come to this country from other places where they've been tortured or had a horrible time, you know, we should respect them. They should be the heroes. You know, the Rwandan refugees, or, you know, these are the people that should be our heroes. Because these are the people that show us that it's possible to be human no matter what. And these are the people that somehow keep their humanity too. It's amazing how some of the down and out people are the ones that end up being the most generous, wonderful people. I was doing a documentary about sweatshops, and I was in Thailand and talking to a sweatshop worker in shadow because she didn't want to lose her job, and she's working like 12 hours a day, and then at the end of it, I mentioned something about not being able to find the fruit that I was looking for. I was looking for some guavas, I think it was. And right after this, and this is a very poor woman, she ran out into the market and bought me some guavas and came back, you know? It was, people like that are everywhere. We're not, what we think is normal and natural and everyone out for themselves, and what Christians think is human nature isn't necessarily the truth at all. So it's that variety and that stamina and that constant surprise that I think is what's always worth looking for.
I think that's great. I think that was wonderful. Thank you so much.